Hi, I am WormFood. We have a very special episode today as we talk about one of my favorite philosophers, Friedrich Nietzsche. Now, I have a very special message at the end of this video. It's going to be a little bit shorter today. I don't have a quote of the day, and I don't have best part, worst part set up because it's not the end of the month, and there's still half of a month to go. So, Friedrich Nietzsche, who was he, what did he do, and how important was he? So, inspired and critiqued many philosophers. He was a critic before critics were hip and cool. He critiqued Immanuel Kant, Plato, Socrates, a lot of these classical thinkers of the time. He critiqued Rene Descartes, one of my old philosophy teachers' favorite person. So, because of this, he made waves as he was a nihilist. But he also held individual perspectives in such high regard. He had a very large influence across many of people and many of groups. And we have a very sad ending to this as well. So, he grew up in 1844 in a fundamentalist household. His father was a Lutheran, and so Frederick grew up being a Lutheran as well. He was the oldest of 3 children, and he was going to be the next man of the house. At 4 years old, his father passed, and he assumed the role. He went to school, had a job trying to support him and his family at the same time. 6 months later, after his father passed, his youngest brother passed. He was 4. Frederick, after leaving his hometown, he got to go to a university and got a taste of smaller freedoms that we in modern living take for granted. We have so many different cultures, and we are exposed to so many different things because of the internet. And I would like to just say we have taken it for granted, but we are traditionally juxtaposed to this way of living. He found passions outside of his father's shadow. Outside of the Lutheran belief, he found a passion for orchestra and composing music, while many critiqued it for being bland and uninspired anti-music, surprisingly. Now, while at college, he had lost his faith, leaving it behind him and claiming that we people invented God and not the other way around, which was blasphemous at this time. And figure this was about 1856, but he ended up going and denying his faith. When he did, he ended up going and finding a passion in the older studies of Greek and Roman philosophies and their general practices and teachings. Because of this, he ended up showing off that he knew what he was talking about. Classical philology, it's Greek and Roman philosophies. After dealing with illnesses all of his life, he ended up leaving a job at a university that he was offered. He became an independent philosopher at this point. His writings include The Gay Science, one of his most famous works, covering various different types of philosophies and paving way for his future books and teachings. Following his initial publishing of the book, he wrote Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where he made his large and biggest impact. This is a quote from the passage. "Where is God?" he cried. "I will tell you. We have killed him. You and I. All of us are his murderers." This is to show that we have started moving forward in the ways of science, and because we have, it has stripped away power of religion and myths. And at this time, it was blasphemy. In the book, this Zarathustra was getting laughed at whenever he was saying this. It would be a perfect reflection of how he felt whenever he would say it. He had written about Apollyon and Dionysian living style, even though it was inspired by comedy and tragedy in the Greek poetry and playwriting aspect. The Apollyon person would try to bring order and justice within the surrounding area. Dionysian was a heavily amoral practice, usually described as barbaric. He ended up blaming the Dionysian lifestyle on why his violence was bad, his drive for sex would torture him, but it also changed the idea of Dionysian forever, because he created a separate, as he depicted him as a god of suffering and redemption, instead of festivals, party, and wild behavior. He heavily criticizes Orphic tradition and the Homeric speech, where you would have immense storytelling in patterned speak, because it would later reflect in Christianity and Platoism, or Platonism. He would go forth, using many illusions instead of hard reasoning. And yet he critiques Socrates for undervaluing human suffering and the necessity of myths by holding reason to the utmost degree. Nietzsche thought that the only objective truth in life was one's perspective, as objectivity is in truth is incoherent. This is very, very broad, and I know it's not anything too alarming, but the idea that our perspectives are what drives our universes forward is a concept that has been held for a while. But this is 1844 we're talking about, and we're in 2015 now. Back then, this was revolutionary and groundbreaking. It was absolutely bizarre. Now, he was also assumed to be a nihilist, and he ended up having a very pessimistic view on life. Well, if I was 4 and had to end up leaving my school to try to get a job, and then go to college without much education, that would be a very big drive for me to do better. But it would also give me a bleak outlook whenever I know that my father died when I was 4, or my younger brother died 6 months after. He didn't have time to recover, and honestly, therapy probably would have helped him out a lot. Once again, something that we would take for granted nowadays. Now, his work is such a literary pool. He speaks from a very long point, talking about an Übermensch, a overman, so that this person is above everybody else because of the philosophies they hold, and defines everybody else as apes. But this also, funnily enough, leads into one of his greatest blunders to me. Although I do agree with parts of it, he was very, very heavy about talking with slaves of morality. Slaves of morality is a concept that we as people are only holding our moralities because of people above us. Not necessarily because it is truly good, but because it is beneficial for us as a society. He holds philosophers in such high regard for going against the traditional normal, but will criticize us and others for needing to go with what they say, they being the masters in this scenario. I do agree that we are all slaves to something. If it is a vice, if it is a virtue, or if it is a goal. I feel as if I am a slave to my ambition. I have a lot of things that I want to do, so it holds control over me. Nietzsche would say that the smart thing to do is to let my ambition die and seize control of my own thought process and will myself forward. But the will of self is only necessary whenever you are at your lowest points, I feel. Now, his books are a in-depth read, and unfortunately, Nietzsche died of a brain disease, so he never could fully grasp or elaborate on what he meant, but the last letters he wrote were ramblings of a madman. Now, one of the saddest truths about his life was that if you go back and you look at everything that he's wrote, he says that we as people should determine ourselves. His books were used to fuel propaganda that a certain German dictator and his group used, with publishing by his sister, giving it a stamp of approval while he was brain dead in a chair. He held non-German belief, and he opposed anti-Semitism and nationalism at any level. He believed that we as people should decide our own fates, and that no God, no will higher than our own should dictate us any further. It is a very, very sad life that he lived, but that dictated everything that he did. From a very pessimistic point of view and understanding of life, I think that he would have been fine. It would have eventually been fine. He challenged many, many thought-provoking ideas, such as I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am became the antithesis of what he believed, as he ended up saying that it was fundamentally wrong. It was fundamentally infallible. And if it's infallible, that means it can't be proven wrong. So there is no just way of debate or argue with it. He opposed traditional points of view, and we see much of that online. And to a degree, we could very much appreciate Friedrich Nietzsche for that. Now, I said that I had a very important message at the end of this video. Next week, we are going to be taking a deep dive into perspectivism, something that Nietzsche was very, very proficient with, as I spoke about earlier. And I have my very first guest coming on the episode next week. He is an animator and an editor by trade, and it is going to be very, very different. I am WormFood. Thank you so much. Check out some links down below. Most of Friedrich Nietzsche, his book should be public domain. If not, go to the library. Read on paper. It would be a very good change of pace instead of staring at a screen. Thank you so much, and have a good day.